I'm wondering why it's so important to you to discredit this.
I believe in the truth. I think the truth is important. Do you think the truth is important?
I'm gonna ask, do you
You should read Grave Error. I think you really need to read that book because you do not have an understanding at all.
Ma'am, I don't need that from you, thank you. Hi, can you hear me?
Hi there, I can, yes.
Awesome. Okay. So I do have the recording on.
Okay,
so you know.
I'm recording this as well.
Yes. Oh, okay. Sounds good. Okay, so do you think that you could introduce yourself for me? Your name?
Francis.
First and last?
Yes, Francis Widdowson.
Okay, and what you do?
I'm a professor. I was a professor at Mount Royal University, which is a story in its own right about my ongoing dispute with Mount Royal.
Okay. And what do you do now?
I'm a writer, and basically I'm a senior fellow with the Frontier Center for Public Policy, and I'm a board member for the Society for Academic Freedom and Scholarship.
Okay, cool. All right, so why are you going to Quesnel?
I'm going to Quesnel to address the misinformation that was spread by the city councilors at the meeting on March 19th.
And what misinformation is that?
Well, the first is that many of the councilors didn't appear to have read the book and were making comments about it on the basis of their own speculation, I guess. I don't quite know where they got this information, but they were arguing that the book denies the abuse and the harms that were caused by the residential schools. And I believe Tony Goulet even implied that we were denying that the residential schools existed at all, which is one of the problems with this terminology of residential school denialism, which if you just took that description literally, you would think that that meant you're denying the existence of the residential schools. And that's not a clear term at all. It was developed by the academic Sean Carlton, basically to smear his opponents and discourage debate on the residential schools.
Okay, and so what are you saying? If that's what they're saying? What are you saying your book says, and how is it different from what they're representing?
Well, the book completely recognizes the abuses that occurred at the residential schools and realizes that there were serious problems. Many of the articles, there's a whole bunch of different articles. First of all, it's not written by one person. It's there's over 15 contributors to this, and basically it's understood that there were terrible problems with the residential schools, logistical, and also the difficulties of abuse and insensitivity and underfunding and so on. The main issue that we are talking about in the book is the Kamloops case and the false claim that was made by Roseanne Casimir on May 27th, 2021, that the remains of 215 children had been found on that site. And there is no evidence at all for the existence of remains on that site. And it is highly improbable that there will be such remains because not one parent has said that their child never came home from the Kamloops Indian Residential School. So the book is largely about trying to correct information that was spread about that case, but it also tackles the issue of whether the residential schools were genocidal or not. So it's taking issue with that claim of the residential schools being genocidal.
Okay, and what do you think would benefit? Like, to what benefit do you think it would help, like that group in Kamloops, like, to lie about that?
Well, they obtained $7 million for making that claim. And there's all sorts of other disputes and dispersions of transfers that have been made because of the implication that genocide was perpetrated against not just that group, but Indigenous people. So what people don't understand with respect to Indigenous policy is that there's a huge industry that is built up around these legal disputes, and the residential schools and all the settlements that have happened, as well as the whole claims about genocide, are a way of extracting transfers. And this is not beneficial at all for ordinary Indigenous people. They're not the ones benefiting. It is the lawyers who are initiating these disputes that are benefiting.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. So I've just wondering. I've been covering local government for a while, and normally they're pretty disorganized. They can't find. They're very disorganized. So I'm just wondering how. What information you have to suggest that a government, like a whole series of different governments, these different Indigenous governments, would go about creating a conspiracy this vast, like how they would be able to keep that under wraps.
It's not a conspiracy, and in fact, it's due to the media's complete failure, the failure of the media and people like yourself. Why are you not investigating these claims that are being made and trying to see what evidence there exists? The media has been absolutely terrible. And the thing, what happens is, and this is what's going on in Quesnel right now, if you are a critical thinker and you analyze the evidence, and this has been done in many articles, and I myself have a piece in there called Billy Remembers, which investigates these claims in depth. If you do that, you will be hit very hard with accusations of racism, your hatred for Indigenous people. And because most people, myself included, want to be someone who helps to deal with the terrible problems that Indigenous people are facing, getting accused of these sorts of things makes it very difficult to pursue the truth on the residential school file. It's not a conspiracy. People follow their own interests. And there's money to be made by claiming that there's unmarked graves in all these areas.
Okay, so today, Kamloops is having, they're doing a sealed meeting with the Catholic Church to obtain all the different documents from the residential school about all the different children and all the different things that went on. If they were to uncover, if those files were to say, the files from the church were to say, yes, these children died, would you accept that as being proof that you were wrong?
Well, we all know that children died at the residential schools. That's not the same thing as saying that there's these clandestine burials in an apple orchard. We have death certificates of children.
I'm saying if there's...
If the records say that a bunch of priests murdered children, would I accept that? Yes, if yes. There were records that said that. But that's not going to happen. And it's a ridiculous assertion. We don't have any parent who's saying that their child never came home. Who are those 215 children who are buried in the apple orchard? It doesn't make any sense. And journalists need to be using their critical thinking skills and their journalistic abilities and stop pandering to this ridiculous kind of claims.
I don't need you to raise your tone like that.
I'm getting a bit tired of the sorts of claims that are being made after 3 years and have been called every name in the book and having incompetent journalists who cannot do their jobs.
I don't need you. That's not helpful for our line of questioning right now.
Well, it doesn't matter at all what you think. You do your job.
I'm going to keep asking my questions,
Go ahead.
Which is my job. And what I'm asking you to do now is not to yell at me.
Well, I'm not yelling
at you.
I'm not yelling at you.
That gets in the way of my ability to ask you the questions. Okay?
All right.
So, who invited you to the Quesnel Council?
I'm not going to say that because there's terrible censoriousness that's happening in Quesnel, and people are punishing people for discussing this book. So it's not
Was
fair
it
to these
someone
people.
related to the mayor, or
I'm
was
not
it
going
a
to. I'm not
different
going to answer
person?
that question, and you can understand, being a journalist, how anonymous sources are important in certain circumstances.
When you say censoriousness, what do you mean by that? What does that mean?
Demands for punishment and trying to actually have censure against people who try to speak freely against these ideas, about these ideas.
Can you give me an example of that happening?
The son of Pat Morton has Sean Carlton trying to encourage people to destroy her tax business. Not her tax business, her son's tax business.
Isn't that how the free market works, though, where you can choose not to go to a business if you don't like the people who are running that business?
Having a professor make all sorts of outlandish claims about someone, many would say defamation, which should be pursued in the courts, to encourage people, rather than discussing things and trying to understand things more, but to punish people and to ruin their livelihood, is absolutely shocking, and people should be very worried about what's happening in Quesnel right now.
I mean, that's not an actual argument.
Saying
that
we
people
should be
be
fighting
worried
against
is not an actual argument.
Well,
that's just a bid for emotion. That doesn't tell me why they should be doing this, or what it is that. There's lots of things for people to be worried about. Okay, so are your travel expenses being paid by anyone? Or are you paying them yourself?
We'll see what washes out of the whole thing.
What do you mean by that?
It depends on how much the expenses are, but I don't really see why I have to justify my travel to Quesnel to people. I'm coming perfectly.
Well, if you were invited.
I was invited, yes.
And you won't tell me by who. And I'm wondering, are you selling books? What's your motivation to go?
First of all, I receive no money whatsoever for the books. So there's people claiming that I'm doing this because I'm trying to sell books. I get no benefit at all from those books. So that's just trying. The reason why I want people to read this book is because it provides information which is not being disseminated through the media, which one would expect to be happening in a free and democratic society with a free press.
Don't you think that it's quite like a lot of trouble to go to say that 215 children died in order to get $7 million? There's a lot of other ways to get $7 million.
Well, it's a general benefit, that is a financial benefit that's brought by doing that. The more you can exaggerate the harm that has been caused, the more money you'll be able to extract on that basis. And it's been very lucrative, not just for the Kamloops band, but there has been $250 million that has been dispersed since that announcement was made in May 2021.
So, because there have been over 6,000 bodies found at this point, are all of those
what bodies have been found?
I'm going with information from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and then various other government bodies.
But you said 6,000 bodies have been found.
That's the current number, yeah. That's on.
And you say the Truth and Reconciliation Commission says that 6,000 bodies have been found?
Can I complete my questions, please?
You're the one who made that claim, and as a journalist, you should be concerned about the accuracy of your claims.
Yes, don't worry. I'm very aware of what my job is. Thank you.
Well, you haven't been doing a very good job so far.
I don't need you to provide feedback. I don't need that at all. I need you to answer my questions.
Well, you made a false claim, and I am telling you that your claim is false. And you should be more concerned about the accuracy of information.
I'm going to keep asking my questions. I don't need you to browbeat me. That's not helpful. That's not what we're here to do.
Well,
you are... Okay. So, I can find you some documentation later and send it to you that says the number of children's bodies that have been found so far with this LiDAR. I don't need you to interrupt me while I'm speaking.
I'm looking forward to your documentation of the 6,000 bodies of children that have been found.
Please stop interrupting me. Again, if you're saying that it's some sort of widespread conspiracy, don't you think that there would be a better way for people to obtain money than to be lying about the death of children? Children dying, children being buried in places is very sensitive. Do you think that this is something why would they do that? Wouldn't they pick a different thing that would be less harmful to the people that they know, the people in their communities?
Have you finished? Are you claiming that I'm saying there's a conspiracy?
I think that it is that saying that communities have hopped onto an idea of pretending that children are dead in order to get a lot of money would be a very outrageous thing for a bunch of people to say, especially when I'm quite sure that that would be something that the rest of their community wouldn't go along with. And given that small communities are very bad at lying, they're very bad at keeping secrets from each other, either that everyone would have to be going along with this vast conspiracy, or they would just have to be very cruel, and be totally fine with saying that all these different children were dead and they were and misrepresenting it. So which is it? Are they liars or are they cruel?
They're not liars. There's no conspiracy. If you can let me speak for a little while, I would appreciate it. What happens is that there are these stories that are going around in communities based upon things that have been done by a defrocked United Church minister by the name of Kevin Annett. Because of the distress that exists in communities, which are very distressed, this tends to be something that has influenced the memories of people, did occur, just don't interrupt me, as occurred in the case of the satanic panic that happened in the 1980s and the 1990s. Quite a similar situation, which I document in Michelle Remembers. Those people were not lying. They are people who are distressed, who have their memories influenced by these sorts of things. And because money can be made from this, that's why you see these things catch fire within these communities.
So why were they distressed then?
Because of
why were they so distressed?
Because of the terrible social dislocation that's happened in Indigenous communities, the isolation, the dependency which exists in these communities, the terrible fetal alcohol syndrome rates which exist in these communities. So that's why there is so much distress in these communities.
So are you saying that that they all imagined this? Like this is all imagined?
First of all, no one ever said that 215 children were murdered in Kamloops. No person said that. What you have is ground penetrating radar seeing anomalies, and it was assumed that this must have meant that there were 215 children that were buried clandestinely in an apple orchard. So no one was going around saying 215 children were murdered at Kamloops before the GPR came about.
So, okay, but to be clear, you're saying that these people have imagined this.
Well, some, for example, there's particular cases that you can look at.
Alcohol-induced brain damage in their children. Like is that what I'm hearing?
No, you were asking me why they were so distressed. And I was saying that was one of the causes of the distress. You have people who have suffered from various things, and that makes them highly emotional and suggestive to think various stories like what Kevin Annett was putting forward. And you have people like Billy Coombs, who's one of the eyewitnesses. There's only, as far as I know, if you read Billy Remembers, which you probably won't do, it has 2 eyewitnesses that have actual accounts. Everything else is secondhand. So it's not those people who have these stories. It's just recounting stories of others. So you have 2 eyewitnesses.
And then so is it that these people then, all these different other Indigenous communities, they thought it was a good idea, and they started also kind of mass hallucinating these deaths due to sadness?
Well, this is people who evidently, there's stories in the community. For example, Pine Creek, there were stories that there were people buried in this church. And so what they did is they went and took a GPR machine down there, and they saw that there were anomalies there. They dug up that basement of the church, and there were no remains there. So someone had this kind of story that they'd heard about people being buried in this church. This is the kind of thing that's happening.
Okay, so I think I have a pretty good idea of what you're saying. And so are you going to be paid to be in Quesnel?
No.
No. Okay. And then are your travel expenses being covered?
Well, I'm going to see how much they are. If I can cover them myself, I will. But if they're going to be a large amount, then I will try to raise money from my various associates.
Okay, and which associates are those?
I know a lot of people through the Indian residential schools research that's being done. So there's a group that I interact with, and we're right now. I don't anticipate it being the expenses being all that high, but it's hard to know in advance. But I'm not making any money off of this.
How long are you going to be in Quesnel for?
For a couple of days.
And are you doing any other events while you're there?
I'm hoping to. I was hoping actually to do a presentation in a public forum type of situation, but we'll see how things go. It depends upon demand, I guess. But what I really would like to do is have these documents, which I have obtained, which are on the agenda for the April 2nd meeting, and ask the councillors who denounce grave error without ever having read the book, ask them some questions about what they are putting into the public record at that meeting.
So the federal government, the provincial government, the municipal government in Quesnel, they all say that, yes, these things have happened. There are children buried in apple orchards. Are all of those different governments lying? Like, are all of those different people just not telling the truth, or they're going along with these stories imagined by Indigenous people?
Are you saying that the federal and provincial government are saying that there's children buried in that apple orchard?
I'm asking why all of these different people at all of these different levels of government, all these different intelligent, thoughtful people who've worked really hard and learned a great number of things to get to their positions, why they would all be so, why it would happen that they would all be so stupid. If that's what's going on, if the truth is as you're reporting it to be, then how is it that all of these government officials are so have been so connived?
Well, first of all, the onus is on the people who are saying that there's 215 children buried there to provide that evidence.
Have provided it.
What's that?
And they have provided it, and the majority of people are quite satisfied with.
Are you as a journalist? Are you satisfied with the evidence?
I am. Of course, I am.
You think that there's 215 children buried in the apple orchard in Kamloops?
I think that at this point, there has been enough documentation. There's enough social and archaeological consensus to say to say that we can just believe Indigenous people and move on with trying to do our best by them as a society.
So I'm just going to repeat this again to make sure I haven't misunderstood you. You are saying that there are 215 children buried in the apple orchard. There is evidence to show that there are 215 children buried in the apple orchard in Kamloops.
I think that I'm wondering why it's so important to you to discredit this.
I believe in the truth. I think the truth is important. Do you think the truth is important?
I'm going to ask, do you...
You should read Grave Error. I think you really need to read that book because you do not have an understanding at all.
Ma'am, I don't need that from you, thank you.
Well, you are a seriously incompetent journalist. And this is what the CBC has sunk to these days.
I don't think that you accusing me or shouting at me is very helpful to your case.
Well, I don't really think I'm shouting at you. I'm just telling you, for someone who is here doing an interview on this case...
Please stop. Please stop. That's enough. This interview is now over. Thank you for your time.
Well, you're going to hear more about this.